Beaufort County. And first off, we have Mr. Mark Johnson, the projects engineer in the engineering department. So thank you so much, Mark, for taking some time out of your day and joining us here.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
So I know we've been talking a little bit, and your department has a big conference coming up, correct?
Well, it's really for all of the infrastructure folks. I'm the immediate past president of the Low Country branch of the American Public Works Association, and one of the things that the APWA does is put on professional conferences. We've partnered with the Beaufort Regional Civil Engineers Club to put on a one-day conference, and it'll be on Thursday, September 26th, at the Buck-Walter Recreation Center.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what we're going to be seeing at this conference?
Sure. It's mostly professional presentations. We'll have some presentations on specific projects that some of the engineering firms want to showcase. We'll also have some demonstrations of some of the products, some pipe products and things like that. And we'll have some presentations also on recycling, stormwater, things like that, and it's all for professional purposes.
Is this the first time you're hosting this conference, or have you done something like this before?
Well, previously I was in the Charleston area, and we would do that once a year up there. Now that I'm down here, we're going to be doing it here.
Kind of just bringing it along with you.
Yes.
Love to see it. And I know Beaufort County is involved, but who all is going to be at this conference?
Well, we're making it a regional event down here. This is something that the state chapter has been wanting to do for some of our smaller communities that are out in the rural areas. So we'll be inviting Colleton County and Hampton County, Jasper County, and all the municipalities there, and of course all of our partners here in Beaufort County as well.
So a lot of our surrounding counties are going to be involved, and it's going to be great. What are you most looking forward to?
Probably the drone demonstration.
Oh.
Yes, that will be interesting for me. I don't know that much about drones.
Oh yeah, we a couple of us are drone certified, so it's pretty interesting to see and getting to watch that type of thing. But Mark, once again, I want to thank you for taking just a little bit of time and coming out here and talking to us. I think we have to move on to our next interview. But thank you, and then looking forward to hearing about this conference later.
You're most welcome.
Thank you. Yeah.
Make sure that microphone looks the same as yours as far as the
Alrighty, and time for our second interview. Miss Rebecca Witt, you are in the Beaufort County Alcohol and Drug Department, which is now rebranded to Nexus Care of Beaufort, correct?
That's right.
Can you tell me more about the rebrand?
I would love to. Thanks, Chloe.
Of course.
This is the 50th year that we've been providing services in Beaufort County, and this was a really perfect opportunity for us to have a new logo and a new name that will take us another 50 years down the road. It's really based off of feedback that we have from the people that we serve, that we have a name now that doesn't include anything stigmatizing about it, so that they can walk through the door. It's a comforting, safe space. And we offer a lot more than just alcohol and drug services. We know that people in recovery need a lot. They might need connections to medical care, mental health care, housing, and a support system. And so that's what Nexus means. It's a place where everything comes together for you so that people can recover and stay in recovery for a long time.
And I know you're right in time for September. It's Recovery Month, correct? Can you tell me more about that and what you guys are going to be doing this month?
Yes, Recovery Month is always September, and we will be seeing a proclamation this evening at County Council for that. And our peer support specialists, who are people in long-term recovery and now working for the department, are going to be on hand to accept that as living proof that treatment works and recovery is possible. And also in Recovery Month, we're going to be having a special event coming up. It's going to be held on September the 19th, that's next Thursday, at Battery Creek High School at the outdoor football field and track area from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And we're going to celebrate recovery. We're going to not only remember the people that have not survived their substance use disorders, but we're going to celebrate with the people who have, and we're going to have a lot of exhibitors there and lively music and uplifting stories to celebrate recovery in the open, that recovery is possible.
How many times, I know your this event is called Worth the Walk, correct?
Yes.
I don't know how well we're going to be able to see it. We have a little
You can see the flyer.
But it's also posted all over our social media, and this event is going to be great. How many years have you guys done this event?
I think we've done this for a few years. Last year, unfortunately, we did have to cancel because of inclement weather. It is, storm season. This year we do have a rain day on the following Thursday, the 26th. So we're looking forward to great weather on the 19th next week. And if anybody wants to come out, of course, you can scan the QR code on our social media, our website, or you can just show up at 6 o'clock at Battery Creek, and we won't be running. It's not a 5K. Just come stroll with us, see the vendors, or have information there on recovery.
Can you tell us a bit more about what vendors are going to be there, if you know that information?
Yes, we're not going to be necessarily selling anything or taking any donations. This is a free family event for people who are our community partners. So we'll have people there such as recovery homes in the area have signed up to come and give information. Nexus Care of Beaufort County obviously will have tables there with information on our programs and services. And several other departments, community organizations, for-profits and nonprofits, treatment organizations of all kinds, so that people can come and learn about the resources that we have available right here in Beaufort County.
Sounds like it's going to be very beneficial, very educational. Is this going to be kind of your department's first big thing after the rebrand, other than the proclamation you're receiving tonight?
That's right. This will be the first big event that we've had with our new branding, and we're excited to show that off to the community and celebrate that with them as well. Celebrating 50 years.
Yes, 50 years. That is an amazing accomplishment for you guys and for your department, and I think it's great that you guys are keeping the community in mind within your rebrand and everything else. Can I hear a little bit more about the proclamation? It's not at this meeting, but it's at the county council meeting at 5 o'clock, correct?
That's right. The proclamation is for National Recovery Month. Like I said, it is every September, which goes all month long. And this one's really to celebrate addiction professionals, the work that we do to help people with recovery, and the people who are brave and courageous and go through the treatment process and do recover. And some of the most amazing people you'll ever meet are people in long-term recovery who have overcome a lot to be in recovery, and it's a real opportunity for everyone to celebrate openly without any stigma, any shame, and hopefully that will inspire other people that, substance use issues are just like any other medical issue, and people deserve treatment and benefit from it.
Yes, of course. Is there anything else you would like to mention while we have you? I know we've had you for several interviews the last couple of weeks, but is there anything else you'd like to mention?
Just want to mention that anyone who's interested in our programs or services, or would like to get some free Narcan, the life-saving overdose reversal medication nasal spray, you can stop by our offices Monday through Friday between 8 and 5 p.m. and we'll be happy to give you on-the-spot training in Narcan or help you get connected and into our services for yourself, or if you want to come and bring a loved one, we can help them too. We also serve adolescents, adults, women, all the populations.
I know you guys also host an array of free Narcan events. I've been out to one. I got my free Narcan and my training. It's quick, only took about 5 minutes to get the training, and it's something that can save people's lives. So it's amazing that I think we as a county are able to provide these for people, and it really is great, everything that you guys do over in your department.
Thank you, Chloe. I appreciate the opportunity to come out and speak this evening.
Of course.
And happy to serve the community.
Thank you, and congratulations on the rebrand and on the proclamation you guys will receive here in just a little while.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you, Chloe.
Well, that is going to do it for both of our interviews. However, we do have a couple of minutes left before our meeting that we are going to be having here starting at 3 p.m. There is 2 meetings today, so after this one, there is going to be the 5 o'clock County Council meeting, in which, if we have enough time, we will see you back here at our council countdown for that one. We do have a lot of exciting things happening in the county here coming up. Like we just talked about, the Worth the Walk event next Thursday, September 19th, is going to be a big one. On September 11th, while it's not necessarily Beaufort County related, Beaufort City and the Exchange of Beaufort is going to be hosting a Patriot Day downtown in the Waterfront Park from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. to honor local military as well as fire department and police department folk. Sorry, I was looking to see, might be doing another interview, but folk that are big in our area, just to memorialize 9/11, which is, of course, here coming up in just a couple of days. We are going to squeeze in one last quick interview. We have Mr. Eric Townsend from the airport here with us. Thanks for finding the time to come out here, Eric.
I would have been here sooner, but the bridge stopped me.
I think every person in Beaufort knows that.
Yeah, everybody's
feeling.
had to do that, so I came over from the Ladies Island Airport, so we're good. I just wanted to talk about what we have upcoming, which is our 5K run in October. And then this Thursday, we also have a chamber event we're hosting, and we'll be out there from 5 to 6:30. So if you want to come out, get food, drinks, and hang out at the airport, come on out. See
Your
us.
business after hours.
Business after hours
coming
this
up
Thursday,
here.
yeah.
And I know a lot of people are excited about that one. The chamber's excited for that
Yes.
one.
We're excited.
If you want to go check it out, head over to the Beaufort Executive / the Frogmore Airport.
Frogmore. We'll go with Frogmore. It's okay.
That's what everyone knows and loves.
Yeah,
here
it's all right.
in-
We're okay with that.
Here in Beaufort, business after hours. Go hang out with Eric and
Yeah,
get some
come
food
on out and see us.
kind of
See
see.
some food,
And
listen
I
to some
know
music.
it's been about a year. You guys have had your remodel.
Yeah, we
of the
remodeled
airport.
a year ago, and it looks great on the inside, and we're going to continue to do some more renovations and build some more stuff and hopefully continue to grow.
And the 5K coming up next month.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit more about
So
that
it's
one?
our 4th annual Flying Frog 5K. It's a play on our Frogmore name. And it's a 5K run around the airport. So we close the airport down, let you run on the runway, circle around a couple times, come back, enjoy, hang out, have a good time. Everybody gets a medal and a cool t-shirt. So
Yeah, and I mean, how often is it that you get to run on an airport runway?
well, for here, it's every year.
Every
Once a
year.
year. You just have to come sign up.
Yeah, so
So-
I know you guys are looking to get as many people out there as possible.
Yes, what we don't ever really advertise is it's a charity event. So every year, if we raise money, it goes to charity. We don't keep any of it. So the more people we can get signed up, the better.
Alrighty, Eric. Well,
thank
that
you
was
for your
quick,
time.
but thank you.
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public notification of this meeting has been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. Please confirm, Ms.
Yes,
Brock?
ma'am, it has.
All right. At this time, we're going to approve the agenda, but before we approve it, I think we have an amendment.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I would ask that we alter the agenda by taking item number 13 as the first item when we get to agenda items.
Do I have a second?
Second that.
I have a second. Without objection? This will be passed, and the new amendment will, I now need a motion for the new amendment.
Yes, ma'am, I would ask that the agenda be approved as amended.
Second that.
Without objection, the new amendment is adopted. Okay. I hope everyone had a chance to read the minutes from August 19th, 2024. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion by Councilman Tabernick and a second by Councilman Dawson. Without objection, the minutes from August 19th are approved. I only have one person for citizen comment. Queen Quet, if she would like to come forward and state your name. We all know you, but
For the
for the
record.
record.
Good afternoon. Glad for day out of Queen Quet, head from the body of the Gullah Geechee Nation and the founder of the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition and current chair for the CPO for St. Helena Island. So I'm glad to be back here. It's been a minute since I've seen you in this context. I've seen most of you, I think, outside of here, actually out in the public doing work. And I just wanted to comment on the fact that you're going to discuss tonight the potential for performing arts and what was being called Performing Arts Center at first, and now I see that it's more of a community center. And so this is something that I know that many people on St. Helena have expressed interest in the past, and so we're looking forward to actually hearing the proposal. I was hoping that the comment wasn't going to have to come until I actually heard the feasibility study, but I'm going to do it decently and in order since I have to comment now. And I just wanted you all to also be well aware that the CPO committee will likely be coming before you in the next couple of months with some of our recommendations, because one of our biggest issues on St. Helena is protecting our waterways, of course, but also protecting the burial areas that are along the waterways and along the salt marsh. And so one of the initiatives that the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition is leading is actually called Gullah Geechee Create. We just had an event on St. Helena, another one, to actually clean debris from the marsh. And then African American and Gullah Geechee artists are converting that or upcycling it into artwork. And that is part of a greater project that we have at the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition called Gullah Geechee Sea and Me, which is saving environmental actions in the marine environment. And so we have funding both from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation for that. And we're coupling it now with funding also from the National Fish and Wildlife Federation as part of the South Atlantic Salt Marsh Initiative. And so St. Helena is a keystone or centerpiece for a number of federal agencies, including the EPA and USAC, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who are working with us. And we have already unveiled the first Gullah Geechee Environmental Health Trail on St. Helena. It starts inside the Gullah Geechee room in the St. Helena Branch Library, and it goes all the way over to Penn Center, all the way to their dock. So we would love for you all to come out, this committee in particular, on one day, and hopefully our councilman will lead you over there. And I can take you on a walk through our trail, but knowing that all of this work is going toward the spotlight on St. Helena so that we protect the environment and keep the culture together. So I just wanted to give you all a little update and let you know I'll be back in a couple months to give you a full report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did anyone sign up late for public comment? Okay. All right, so we are going on with the agenda. Next is our Assistant County Administrator's reports, and Ms. Audra Anasini is going to come forward.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. I just have a couple updates from the Community Services Division. My first one is Rebecca with the Nexus Care of Beaufort County. She would like to extend an invite on an event that the department is sponsoring next month to recognize Recovery Month. I believe she also has a pin for each of you. Any council members that are not here will make sure that they get the flyer at the council meeting this evening. We hope that you all can join us. There'll be quite a few exhibitors. It's going to take place at the Battery Creek.
Battery Creek High School, correct?
Yes, ma'am. September 19th from 6 to 8. And while she's passing those out, I'd like to bring up Caroline Furman. She's the director of the Veterans Affairs Office. If you recall, last month I shared the department sponsored an event at AMVETS in Port Royal, a stand-down for homeless veterans. At that time, we didn't have the data, but I have asked her to come to present the data that she had.
Okay.
Councilwoman Howard, you were there, you attended as well. So it was very successful, so I would ask her to come up here and provide that update to each of you.
Okay, thank you. It was a very crowded event, so I'm interested in
Yes.
hearing how many people were there and how many different organizations.
Yes, thank you so much for attending. On the 16th of August, we did have our inaugural Homeless Veterans Stand Down. We had 75 veterans that actually attended as participants. 55 of them were male and 25 were female. What was not counted were the 15 children. While this wasn't a huge turnout in terms of veteran stand-downs, it was because it was our first. The most important takeaway was that it introduced the need in Beaufort County, as well as the great showing of participants. We had 25 separate different agencies that came out to participate. Nonprofits, government, local government, federal government. We had folks from Columbia, South Carolina, the regional office. We had folks from Ralph H. Johnson, and then from Savannah, Georgia, came out to support this. 75 veterans were given bags that included sleeping bags, pants, shirts, jackets, undergarments, food, as well as rain jackets. So that was their takeaway, but while they were there, they had access to enrollment into healthcare. They had a wellness mobile vehicle from Ralph H. Johnson that did wellness checks. We had civilian nurses that did the wellness checks on dependent, that the VA can't take care of. We got them help with enrollment in veteran services for compensation and benefits, as well as mental health. And we had a couple barbers out there from Poppies that gave free haircuts. So this was a great event. It was, we plan to do it again in future years, but it was just the outpouring of support from not only our leadership, but also the community that came together was really very heartwarming. Thank you very much.
I'd like to open it up for questions. Some questions from county council?
Just want to say thank you very much for the efforts.
Oh,
We
no, my
appreciate
pleasure,
that.
sir.
Yeah. Let us know how we can help you in the future as well.
Yes, sir. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Carol, is this an annual event?
This was the first one, sir, so we do plan on having an annual homeless, veteran, and we'd like to expand that out too. In fact, for everyone that did show up, some of them were not veterans, but we didn't turn any of them away.
Yeah, great.
So we did help everyone.
You had transportation for them.
We did, yes, ma'am. We had 4 locations. The Sheriff's Department partnered with us to let us know where the encampments were, and we had representatives from DAV, Disabled American Veterans, and AMVETS. They took their vehicles and made the sweep throughout the day to pick up and drop off our veterans. Yes, sir.
Very nice.
Thank you. Okay. All right. At this time, we're going to hear from Assistant County Administrator, not Chuck, but we're going to have 2 other people represent the women's. They have some really good news. So if Katie Godowns and Victoria Hoffman would like to come forward. Did you want to say something first, Chuck, or? I'm sure they can handle it, knowing the 2 of them.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So we are representing the emerging leaders and the women's conference, and we are going to be going to Columbia on September 19th to We've submitted for a South Carolina Association of Counties Award, and so this is the first time that we're going to be giving this presentation, but we will be doing this again for the South Carolina Association of Counties on the 19th,
In competition with
in
other-
competition for the J. Mitchell Graham Award.
Great.
Yes.
So you're our practice run.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And action.
Oh, there's supposed to be sound.
Oh,
Sorry.
Welcome to the Beaufort County Women's Leadership Summit, where empowered women shape the future. Every year, we come together to learn, connect, and lead. From inspiring speakers to engaging workshops, this summit is about growth and collaboration. Whether you're a seasoned professional or an emerging leader, the summit is your platform to make a difference. Join us as we continue to empower and inspire in the years to come. Your leadership journey starts here. Beaufort County Women's Leadership Summit, leading the way together.
imagine that your employer is so invested in your growth that you get an invitation to attend this event right to your desktop. In Beaufort County, we're that lucky. Hello, I'm Victoria Hoffman, and I'm the Program Manager for Solid Waste and Recycling for Beaufort County. I was also the Emerging Leaders Vice President from 2021 to 2023.
And I'm Katie Godowns. I'm a senior preventionist with our Alcohol and Drug Agency, now known as Nexus Care of Beaufort County. And I'm a 2024 Emerging Leader and Conference Committee member. Trying to tell you how amazing our Women's Summit is like trying to convey how beautiful Beaufort County is. You just have to see it to believe it.
We hope this video and our presentation displays how impactful this event is. A little bit about our timeline to get this event to fruition. In 2021, the Emerging Leaders Group was created because our Assistant County Administrator of Infrastructure, Jared Fralix, had a vision to have a group to create unity among coworkers who shared a common goal of wanting to excel in their careers and foster meaningful relationships. The group started in the Public Works and Engineering departments and quickly grew to countywide in 2022. As it grew, we established vision, missions, and goals. And to fulfill those goals of developing professional skills and serving the community, our first project was created, which is the Women's Leadership Summit.
In 2023, the Women's Leadership Summit was created to foster gender equity, empower, and encourage women within Beaufort County government to focus on their personal and their professional growth. It creates an opportunity for our staff to learn and engage from local leaders. It not only benefits the participants of the Women's Conference, but it allows the leadership committee, the emerging leaders that are planning it, to strengthen their skills in project planning, budget planning, event coordination, and team leadership. In 2023, we had our first summit, as you can see in these pictures, and it was called Expanding Our Influence. And in 2024,
I got it.
we had our second conference, which was called Embracing Me, A Journey of Growth. These last two events were so impactful that our leadership encouraged us to apply for the South Carolina Association of Counties Awards, and so here we are today.
This table displays a bar graph that represents the percentage of women in leadership roles in various sectors in 2024. Despite significant progress, women remain underrepresented in leadership roles. As you can see, just 10% of CEO roles in the S&P 500 are held by women. In the healthcare industry, despite women making up the majority of the workforce, they are still underrepresented in leadership roles, holding only 15% of those positions. In government leadership in South Carolina, women hold 14% of elected positions. In Beaufort County, we have more promising figures. About half of the workforce are females, 50% of the directors are female, and 1 in 4 assistant county administrators are female. Addressing the gap of women in leadership roles is not only important for equality, but for economic and social benefits.
The summit was created to encourage, support, and mentor women in pursuit of leadership.
By addressing and promoting diversity and inclusion, the summit helps us build a more cohesive and supportive community. While the majority of the participants are women, men are invited to attend. Why? Because when we can better understand each other, we can create a more welcoming and supportive work environment. We create more comprehensive and inclusive policies. We understand that sometimes men lead women, and sometimes women lead men. And we as humans are created to do meaningful work. It's a ripple effect. When I, as a woman, a mom, a wife, can enjoy and feel encouraged in my career, I now become a more productive member of society. The summit creates networking possibilities throughout county government. Our departments intermingle together, and mentorships are formed. When I am a better Beaufort County employee, I can better serve the community, because at the end of the day, we work for the citizens.
In 2023, we had no idea what to expect as far as attendance. After we sent the email inviting county employees to attend, we quickly reached the max seating capacity of 80 and had to create a wait list.
In 2024, we had over 105 in attendance, and we actually had to cap our registration due to limited space at the venue.
We had a lot of great accomplished speakers. We were able to acquire and had the privilege of hosting Councilwoman of Beaufort County, Miss Alice Howard, Mayor Lisa Solka of Town of Bluffton, Beaufort County Treasurer Maria Walls, and South Carolina State Representative Shannon Erickson.
And this year, a few of our main speakers were Miss Marilyn Harris, the Director of the Black Chamber of Commerce for Beaufort County, Secretary Christy Hall from the South Carolina Department of Transportation, Miss Elisa Passament, our County Council Chairman's wife, and former WWE pro wrestler Lacey Evans.
Oh.
We are now tracking participants from the last 2 years to see where their career journeys take them through the county.
And as you can see from the quote provided by Ms. Daphne Butler, the 2024 Emerging Leaders President, the summit provides an opportunity to lead, expand your skills, and to learn from others. We believe the summit is both innovative and unique. From our research, we were not able to find a similar event that caters to women in the public service positions. We saw a need for the summit and went forward with fulfilling that role. This is also the first and only of its kind for Beaufort County employees. It is a free event, locally held, and catered to employees of the local government, hosted by employees of Beaufort County.
This is one way that we are implementing diversity, equity, and inclusion practices within the county without having a department to address and approach those issues. The summit gives the opportunity for women to have a voice, to be seen, and to build a community of diverse, like-minded people who they can work with and then fall on for support. And this is how you can implement this in your county. First is to identify leaders like we did with the Emerging Leaders Group in your county that can take on such a task. Then, after you've created that committee, you create subcommittees that can take part in the summit and identify a budget, a theme, and a venue that will leave your participants excited and encouraged. Brainstorm speakers and activities based on the theme chosen. And then planning doesn't have to be hard if you have the right people and the right tools in place to execute the event.
The green bar is a link to a Dropbox where we have provided documents that will assist others in planning similar events. The documents include a planning checklist, templates, and a sample document that we use when planning. This is something that we are passionate about, and we love to see others use these resources.
This is what we have found when we initiated this event. It was not just needed because the committee wanted to put it on. The emerging leaders realized very quickly that the participants needed it. Like I said, over 100 were at the event this past year.
The Beaufort County Women's Leadership Summit isn't just an event, it's a movement.
And the future of that movement, it's in your hands. Let's lead South Carolina in it together.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was great
Good.
practice.
Now, any questions from our committee. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
You don't need luck. It will go well, I'm sure. It's excellent presentation. Okay, we have no other reports from the Assistant County Administrators. At this time, we'll take the agenda item that was moved up, which was number 13 on the original agenda, which is recommend approval to fund the review of the Mitchellville appraisals. And I'd like to recognize Chairman of the Green Space Committee, Mr. Mike McShane. We met on Friday, the Green Space Committee did, through his leadership, and he has a report and recommendations to this committee.
Well, good afternoon, Madam Chairman, committee members. For the record, my name is Mike McShane. I'm a resident of Charleston County, although the last few days I feel like I might be here enough to where maybe your tax assessor might say something about my participation here. But I am here. We have a request, and I'll come to that request of this committee. On Friday, your Green Space Advisory Committee met with the purpose to offer an opportunity for some of the municipalities and others to comment about the program. You have before you a project that this council has approved under resolution referred to as Mitchellville, which is approximately 26 acres on Hilton Head Island. Your resolution was 100% of the appraised value for a new appraisal. It's a little bit of a complicated scenario because there was a court order in the process about how quickly a contract had to be, and it was under a bid process, under court review. The town of Hilton Head made a commitment and went under contract, or offered a contract, for $11.75 million. The new appraisal came in right around $10 million. There had been an appraisal done over a year prior, which was why our recommendation was to look at doing a new appraisal, because your committee's policy is, we think, that appraisals of that tenure need to be reviewed. It is not uncommon when you see that sort of differential to ask for a third-party review. In my state role as chairman of the state bank, we've done this probably about a half dozen times. To be clear, this does not necessarily assure anyone that an appraised value will change, match the original appraisal. In fact, offers some risk that an appraisal could come at a lower number. Under state law, your conservation bank, your state bank, and I'm going to quote here, by statute, the board only may authorize grants or loans to purchase interest in lands at or below fair market value. In the cases, may funds from the trust be used to acquire interest in lands at a price that should never be used to exceed fair market value. We made that recommendation as it's our policy on our recommendations not to exceed an appraised value. And I would encourage council to stay to that. We're asking today for the committee's approval for an expenditure that should be not to exceed $10,000. It should be far less than that. To have the county, through its procurement process in consult with the legal counsel of your Green Space Committee, to have a third-party review. For those who may not be familiar with the third-party review, it typically is to look at metrics, standards, where they follow the normal practices and report back. Once that report comes back, then we can assess whether there's any recommendation on the change of that most recent appraisal. We would then come back to the committee to inform that. I very much appreciate the fact that both Chairman Passman and Administrator Moore were in attendance along with Chairman of the committee on Friday on that. In the municipalities that were represented, just so everyone is aware, the town of Hilton Head, the town of Bluffton, the city of Beaufort, and the town of Port Royal. I asked staff to confirm, and I think they did affirm, the town of Yemassee was included in that invitation, but they did not. And there were other applicants there as well that were not municipalities. My view of that was that some of the municipalities were very hung up on a particular word called match. I think they thought match was a very narrow scope of that they had to put money in it, and they believe through the process of the referendum that they were not ever told beforehand that they would have to ever put money in that. I offered an explanation, as the administrator told me earlier, we'll see if they heard the explanation, that match does not necessarily mean it has to come specifically from the town. Match could be a bargain sale. Match could be philanthropy. Match could be other state or federal grants for that. I offered to the municipalities that it's my experience representing the state for over 2 decades on many conservation real estate transactions that when the state shows up, knocks on the door, what do you think happens to the value? It goes up. The state has learned a long time ago that we don't go knocking on the door to try to negotiate. We look for our friends and partners in conservation to help do that, and have been very successful at that. Whether it's through commerce, or natural resources, forestry, or parks, recreation, and tourism, or frankly, even on some of our state universities to do that. I encourage the municipalities to look at their partners to help them with that. Oftentimes, landowners will be willing to consider a discount when they know that can be a charitable gift through that nonprofit, as well as provide other tax benefits for them. Mr. Chairman, your observation and the administrators is that seemed to be a new idea to some of our friends in your municipalities. Hopefully they'll seize that opportunity and use that going forward on that. I made a specific suggestion when you asked me to serve at your pleasure to take $100 million of taxpayer money and let's have a $400 million impact. Not to take $100 million, divvy it up amongst municipalities, send them a check, and watch it just not have that kind of impact. You've already proven that because on the deal that was in Jasper County, you took $1 million that had a $35 million impact. Mitchellville was that enough of an iconic and unique project that our recommendation was to fund 100% up to the appraised value. I don't think the committee will continue to bring suggestions, recommendations to fund 100% when we know there are ways that our friends can go seek other funding. That's how you take that $100 million and have a $400 million impact on that. Madam Chairman, the request is for the Green Space Committee to have the authority to spend up to $10,000 to do a review of the 2 appraisals that have been done on Mitchellville. And I should ask, and I don't know if there's an update on the closing of Mitchellville. Okay. Should any moment now with that.
Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion to that effect, and
I will be so glad to make that motion.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Second. Let's open it up for discussion.
Madam Chairman, just
Yes.
a quick question.
Go ahead.
Mr. McShane?
Sir.
Listen, first of all, thank you very much for your efforts. I watched that meeting Friday. I think there's a lot of moving parts to it. I believe we have a good relationship with our town of Hilton Head. This $10,000 ask, does that include a separate appraisal? Where is that discussion?
It's a very, very good question. Let's be clear. We're not asking to do a third appraisal. We're asking to do an appraisal review by a third party. That's to take the 2 existing appraisals. I don't recommend doing a third appraisal. One, from a timing standpoint, that could,
Sure.
I don't control that calendar. But it is not unusual to have a third party review the 2 appraisals been done. So they would have an independent review of that, of how they were done, process. Did they use the accurate plat information? There was a correction on the plat between the first and second appraisals. That's going to have an impact.
Sure.
there were also some other elements of archaeological value that were determined that will have an impact on value. This will assure that, in my mind, I think our recommendation will be assured that we come back with good intel for this council.
That's fantastic. Does this appraisal or review allow that group to adjust those numbers? I mean, between the first appraisal a year or so ago to now, I mean, some people are finding it very difficult to understand how property of that nature, especially in this market on the ocean like it is, can go from what it was about a year ago to what it is today, you know, based on the court pressure to get this done. My thing is, how do we look at that and make people feel comfortable about that whole process?
Well, I think the first and foremost is we're always transparent on what we do. So there's nothing is done sort of in the back of a room to do so. So the fact that you have set up a green space committee, so council's not trying to manage that. It takes the politics of that out. We make a recommendation. We have our own independent counsel who then chooses to go through and oversee that review alongside your county council to do so, and your staff to do that. To me, that means that there should be good confidence in the process being applied.
Excellent. I appreciate that, and I just want to make sure we understand the parameters of what the view is going to be and what the recommendation was.
I completely can appreciate the fact that it was about a $1.8 million differential between the two appraisals. It's easy for me to look at them and come up with why I think, but this will then allow professionals to do so.
Perfect.
And come back.
That to me is important.
But I was very clear to our friends, do not have the expectation it's necessarily going to bring it right back dollar for dollar to what they did. And also I'd ask this council, keep in mind, had they not made that offer, we wouldn't be having this discussion. There was a second competing offer slightly under that for a development.
I don't want to lose sight of the fact that this council and the people that that we all represent, appreciate your efforts to make sure this went through the way it did to protect that beautiful property. So I appreciate that.
Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am, Councilman Tabernet.
Hi, Mr. McShane. So I have total confidence in the Green Space Committee since, as you know, I was on the interview team, so I think you're a great bunch of people. And I love that politics is not part of it, so thank you for making that. So I was gonna ask about the third-party review. That's not uncommon, you said?
No, sir, no, ma'am, when sometimes, it is both on the commercial side, but also even on the governmental side. When we see a couple different appraisals and values come in, it's not uncommon to ask for a third-party review. You simply want to make sure, did both appraisals follow the right standards? Did they use the right practices? Were their metrics reasonable? Were they accurate in that? And then it just gives a defense of what it would be. I don't want to walk away from here having people think the number's going to come in somewhere in between.
Mm-hmm.
It may not. It may. It most likely isn't going to come to the highest end. It very well could even say other things were in consideration and these should have been, and therefore the number could be lower. But going through this process is the only way we're going to know that.
And my other question was, after the properties taken in by Green Space, you're gonna still try to find other funders in there, right?
Yes, ma'am. I made a commitment to this council to seek federal dollars for reimbursement to the Green Space Program.
To the Green Space
Program.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Thank you.
Because I firmly believe there are opportunities to do so. Now, to be clear, Green Space won't take the property. Green Space will never hold fee simple to any real estate. In this case, it'll be the town of Hilton Head.
It's okay.
They were the applicant.
Yep, got it.
Any
Thanks.
other questions from any other committee members? Okay, so we had a motion and a second. Do we need a roll call vote? I don't see anyone. All right, without objection, this will pass up to $10,000. The funds will come from Green Space to do the third-party review, and thank you for taking time out of your day.
Thank you for making the adjustment in the agenda so I can get back to Charleston.
Yes, sir. All right, thank you.
Goodbye.
And this
All right.
does not have to go to council, it is the recommendation of this committee.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
So it doesn't have to go to full
No,
council.
it does not.
All right, so next, we're moving on to our agenda. Presentation and consideration of the St. Helena Community and Cultural Events Center feasibility study and market analysis. Rob Merchant, are you going to present, and do we have someone on Zoom, or are you going to present?
Yes, I believe the consultant, Johnson Consulting, is online.
Okay, I see him.
And I was going to hand off the presentation to them.
Okay, sounds
This, of
good.
course, is a study that was, the council funded about 2 years ago, and this is the presentation from the consultants.
Okay, and we will, unless there's objection, we'll let them present and then have questions.
Yes.
Okay, all right, we'll follow, we won't interrupt you till the end. Would
Okay.
you introduce
Great.
yourselves?
Well, thank you, Robert. Thank you, council members. Really appreciate your time today. My name is Ryan Johnson with Johnson Consulting. And as Mr. Merchant mentioned, we were hired to do a feasibility and market study for a proposed community and cultural events center. So we spent a good amount of time working with the city staff and also the community to develop findings and recommendations, which we're here to share with you all today. So with that, John, do you want to maybe advance to the next slide?
Yeah.
So we really have 5 topics for our agenda today, really talking about the market attributes of Beaufort County and St. Helena, also to review the stakeholder process that we went through and the results and findings from that, and then also developing facility and project recommendations. And then we also develop demand and financial projections, and then also have outlined some next steps for consideration. So John, do you want to describe some of the processes that we went through?
Yeah, absolutely. So the chart on, it's the right of my screen, I assume it's the right of your screen as well, kind of gives it a little bit of sense of the approach that we took to this assignment. So, we started with really 3 data gathering initiatives, one being a market analysis, the second being an engagement of some key stakeholders, and then the third being looking at some comparable case studies. And based off of that data, we sort of synthesized into some strategic recommendations for what we saw as the market opportunity on St. Helena Island, and also, what we heard in terms of community needs and desires on St. Helena Island for art space and for event space. Then from that recommendation and based off of other comparable projects that we've worked on, we developed some operating projections, estimates of a financial impact, and then some strategies for funding and marketing the project itself. So, we published that all in a full report. And, today our goal is really to keep it fairly high level and kind of touch on some of the highlights from that report. But that document does outline our full findings and process. So kind of getting underway here, starting with key market attributes. I think what we really saw as we visited the market and looked at it from a data perspective is that, the region has a lot of resources, looking in Beaufort County specifically, but also more broadly, that coastal Carolina region does have, a strong resource base. But St. Helena Island itself has been, kind of left out of that. If you look at, some of these metrics such as household income, household income growth, it's not necessarily keeping up with what we see kind of regionally. With that being said, the regional wealth means that, on St. Helena Island itself, from an economic development perspective, there is an opportunity to capture spending from tourists or wealthier residents in the region. Really the upshot of all of that is that to capture that, we see, St. Helena itself benefiting from, some investment and also some more community resources. So, part of the idea is, there is an economic development opportunity, but also there's an opportunity to serve that community with space that helps with initiatives that are, wanted on the island. And then, just looking at this from an arts perspective, we looked at some different indicators of arts interest. And really what the upshot of this table is that there is a clear performing arts interest within Beaufort County. And that to us points to an opportunity to, bring residents of the county onto St. Helena Island for performing arts type activities, cultural arts type activities, visual, culinary kind of across that artistic spectrum. And then when we look at the hotel market, there's a strong inventory sort of within the county, obviously with Hilton Head representing a lot of that inventory. I think one place that is challenging from a economic development perspective is just that St. Helena Island itself doesn't have that strong, hotel inventory. So, I think as we were thinking about this opportunity, it was how can we balance the idea of, bringing jobs and resources to the community, but not necessarily something that is hotel dependent or tourism focused, right? And so, making sure that it's serving both of those needs. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I think one other thing that's important to think about too are the dormitories that are located at the Penn Center. We do see an opportunity for this proposed multi-purpose community center to really have a lot of retreats and things that could utilize both the Penn Center as well as this proposed project. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thanks. And then, as we alluded to with regards to the hotel market, again, there's strong inventory, but mostly within Beaufort or within Hilton Head and not necessarily within St. Helena. So looking at, a map of the county, there's, that hotel inventory is sort of not necessarily on the island. And most of that inventory is on the upscale side and supporting kind of the very robust tourism industry, certainly that we see on Hilton Head Island. You can see the cluster of hotels there. And then we also looked at sort of regional performing arts centers. And I think, what was interesting from our perspective is, though there are a few performing arts type facilities within Beaufort County, most of the regional centers, within a 2-hour or so drive are in the Savannah or the Charleston markets. And within the county itself, it's really the USC Beaufort Center for the Arts serving that North Beaufort community from a performing arts and arts perspective. And, I think what's interesting about most of those clusters of performing arts centers in Savannah and Charleston is that the proximity of those markets to Beaufort County and St. Helena Island, could potentially lead to some tour conflicts. So if you think about, putting a performing arts center within Beaufort County, if the goal is to capture a touring artist who hits Charleston and then hits Beaufort County and hits Savannah, often those artists are signing sort of a document that says, if I play in Charleston, I cannot play within 100 miles of Charleston for 6 months or a year. And so it can be difficult for some markets within, the middle of some larger markets sometimes to capture those artists, because often the artists would rather, I'll just play Savannah and then I'll play Charleston. And, I'll rely on people from Beaufort County coming and seeing me in one of those markets rather than, coming to them. So that is some, a threat or a challenge that we see possibly, with regards to the idea of bringing in more touring type performing arts.
And I think, too, it's important to think about on the prior slide, there was a mention of the facility at University of South Carolina, Beaufort. And really, it's important to understand what they do and the types of performance and activity that they put on. And then what other areas of opportunity are there in the marketplace for other events? And that was one of the first times in our analytical process to really think about more than just performing arts, but really focusing on a broader range of event types that we'll go through as we go into our recommendations.
And then, from the perspective of looking at tourism assets, and we looked at some of the tourism assets on St. Helena Island, I think Penn Center is the most sort of obvious one as being a significant tourism draw. And I think especially, with the National Park Service's recent designation of St. Helena as part of that historic corridor, there's really an opportunity to kind of package these assets together and tell the story of the Gullah Geechee people and the history of St. Helena Island. And that's, something that we were thinking about when we were coming to our recommendations is how could we complement and enhance these existing assets such that it's kind of uplifting these tourism community in general. And then we also did go through a stakeholder engagement process, which included some in-person meetings, remote meetings, as well as a community survey. And, this process kind of is outlined on the chart to the right. So, again, key stakeholders, potential partners, and then a project steering committee. And we had those working sessions, individual interviews, and the community survey. And, some of the things that, we heard from that process is that, again, with the National Park Service's designation of the Penn Center as part of that national park, there's increasing recognition of St. Helena's cultural significance and increasing national profile and awareness. Kind of working with that, there is, a lot of potential for a new facility on the island to kind of help enhance that, preserve and share the culture of St. Helena Island, as well as the Gullah Geechee community. Kind of looking at it from a different perspective, something that we heard loud and clear is that, multi-purpose space on the island is really needed for all sorts of activities, thinking about event space, and we'll get to some of those event demand layers, but youth programming, arts programming, camps, after-school care, educational programming, and more. And then there's also sort of potential for some partnerships, with that multi-purpose space and some local arts organizations as well. So, I think we would want to see this space really programmed very heavily, and building a coalition among local arts groups, I think, is an important way to do that. I think from a tourism perspective, as we mentioned before, the challenge of the project is just going to be the lack of kind of infrastructure on St. Helena Island to support tourism. So I think, again, orienting it such that you're able to bring in attendees for events here and bring in events themselves, but not necessarily, have them stay overnight, I think is the balance that has to be struck. I think despite the challenges overall, there was a lot of support for the facility, in terms of its opportunities to showcase the history of the island, serve as a community of assets, as well as, stimulate some economic activity and create jobs and so forth within the community. And so that all kind of brings us to our recommendations. And so this is what we were looking at in terms of a recommended program. And I think, it's important to think initially when we were looking at this facility, the first thought was Performing Arts Center, but really the scope has kind of been expanded to this community and cultural events center. And I think the goal of that is to encompass both the arts, but also, multi-purpose events such as smaller conferences, social events, gatherings, banquets, that sort of thing, as well as educational events and programming for youth and adults within the community. And so to meet all of those needs, we tried to recommend something that would be really flexible. So, about a 7,500 square foot multi-purpose hall, potentially divisible into a couple of different spaces with air walls, and then, some meeting space to support that, for a total of about 8,500 square foot of function space. And then support spaces around that as well. So administrative offices, a pantry kitchen, so not a full service kitchen, but one that could support prep for smaller events. And then also backup house circulation and storage spaces. So, overall about a 13,000 square foot building is what we would see this coming to. So, a small facility, but one with a lot of flexibility and a lot of potential to serve, many different needs within the community.
And just for a frame of reference, that multi-purpose hall at 7,500 square feet, if you're having a theater type of event, that would give you about a capacity of 400 people. Then a seated, meal function for a social event would probably be that 200 to 300 person type capacity.
Yeah, and I think what we really heard is that those sizes of events, there isn't really a place to support them currently on St. Helena Island, and that was really what rang out from both of our discussions that we had with community members, as well as the survey, is that folks are not holding these events because there's not an opportunity, or they're going off the island to do these events because there's not an opportunity within the island itself. And then, looking at some demand layers that we would see for programming it. And I think we built this such that, that base, that biggest one is sort of the base of the demand. And then you're filling in the demand puzzle, going up from there. So starting at the bottom, the SMERF market is a term within the event industry that we use, which is an acronym for social, military, education, religious, fraternal, and ethnic. So it's capturing sort of a wide swath, but it's not corporate events necessarily. It's more, outside of your work, you have these social events or organizations that you belong to as a member, and they need event space to gather for banquets, for galas, for award ceremonies, things such of that nature. And then building on that, music and arts performances and events, there's obviously a strong arts culture within the Gullah Geechee community and certainly on St. Helena Island. So, opportunity to serve that, those types of events, as well as, touring groups, spoken word artists, speaker series, that sort of thing, and bringing those into this space. Retreats and conferences, so corporate association, government, state associations or even regional associations need spaces about this size to meet for their annual meeting. And I think entering the market with a new product really provides an opportunity to capture these associations and say, hey, you've never been here before. You might have some folks in this community who are in your association, and now you're getting to come to them and really see this new area of the state or of the region. And then academic and community events. So again, that ongoing education for adults, arts education for children. And we talked about when we were in St. Helena Island, talked about visual arts, performing arts, culinary arts. There's really, I think, a desire for, that to be a really broad word, the arts, right? Extension classes, a potential partnership with USC Beaufort in that regard. Community meetings, right? So, if there's sort of a public forum that needs to be held, this would be a perfect location for that sort of thing as well. And then others to be identified. And I think that's, as this project gets developed and built further out, I think more opportunities will sort of arise and appear as, actually this would be a great event to go in here. We're holding it in Savannah or wherever, but I would love to have it right here. So I think, that's sort of that last demand layer that'll kind of fill in those last few gaps. And so then building off of that recommendation set, so both the facility side and the demand strategy, we came up with some projections. And so, typically with our projections, we look at year 5 as about the year of stabilization. So when you really established a facility within a market, and after that, growth becomes a lot more incremental. And so, I think what we looked at to kind of think about it from a projection standpoint is we looked at nonprofit events. So those academic and community events where the goal of those is really to serve the community, and in the same way that you don't expect a library to make a profit, you wouldn't expect these events to make a profit because they're community well-being kind of resources. And then distinguishing those from for-profit events, which are still serving the community, but you're trying to receive some amount of revenue from those, and that's the music and cultural performances, those Smurf events, rentals for retreats and conferences, and some of those other events as well. And in total, in that year 5 stabilization year, we're looking at about 100 events, with 80% of those being the for-profit, 20% being the nonprofit. And then in terms of attendance, what that looks like at stabilization is about 11,600 attendees to those events in total. So that's kind of how the split works out. But again, I think this programming strategy would be developed further as partners for the project are kind of identified, and we'll get to that a little bit in next steps. And then looking at this from a financial projection standpoint, I think in terms of revenue on a stabilized year, we're looking at about $450,000 to $500,000 a year of revenue. And then the operating expenses come out to about $730,000. So that kind of puts a deficit for the facility at about $256,000 of net loss. And then after we look at, a reserve for replacement, which is essentially putting a certain proportion of annual revenues into a fund for capital improvements, that total, NOI comes out to about a loss of $270,000. But, I do want to contextualize these projections by saying, again, this is a community asset. And so, you're not looking at it in the same way that somebody would look at a hotel or the same way that somebody would look at a restaurant. I think the goal is both to generate some revenue, but also, serve as economic development, serve as a space for arts and events, and community development in general. So, that's, I think, one thing that's important to think about is, well, once, like I said before, you don't necessarily expect a library to turn a profit. but it has benefits that aren't, necessarily financial.
And I think one other important piece for context here is this is really for operating support requirements. This does not include the cost of capital to actually build the facility. So, something like this, of this scale, will be a relatively expensive proposition to build. So that also is part of the funding strategy that needs to be developed if, this is something that the community desires to invest in.
And then, we talked about sort of the throw-off benefits of it. Obviously, some of them can't be quantified in terms of education for youths, programming, ongoing education for adults, and the sort of community benefit components of that. But some of it can be quantified, and that's what we're looking at here in terms of an economic and fiscal impact estimate. And so, really what this is looking at is if we have events here and they bring folks onto St. Helena Island, those folks are going to spend both at the facility itself, and that's creating jobs by, having people employed to run those events, but also they're going to spend at other, places nearby, whether it's restaurants or shops or vendors, that sort of thing. And that's creating jobs itself. And so, what we're seeing from our projections in terms of, total sales volume, and this is looking at, a countywide estimate, but really focused on St. Helena Island, is that, in total in year 5, we're looking at an estimated total spending of about $3 million occurring, both at the facility itself and then indirect and induced around the facility, based on folks coming and spending elsewhere in the community. And that would support about, 23 full-time jobs on an annual basis starting in year 5, growing to 25, 26 in subsequent years, right? And generating about $143,000 in tax revenues for Beaufort County. And that's mostly sales tax, but also, some amount of hotel tax as well. So, again, not a huge hotel impact that we're projecting out of this, but certainly some impact. And I think, that's something that should be considered as well when we're talking about, funding and sort of the ongoing support needs of a facility like this. And then finally, looking at some next steps here, this is the feasibility phase. So this is really step very 1 of a process that is going to occur over, many more months or even years to shape this into the facility that's optimal for the island and for the island's community. And I think, step 1 in that next steps is, as we've discussed before, identifying project partners and champions. So, with a facility like this where there's not necessarily a strong revenue case to be made for it, but there is a strong sort of community case. We see a lot of the time that they're the most successful when you have a group of folks within the community, whether that's within government or within arts leadership, within the education community, who see a vision of the opportunity associated with the project and become champions for it and start building coalitions with different groups, fundraising and trying to secure grants for construction and ongoing financing, and looking at opportunities for programming the facility. So identifying those partners and champions, I think, is going to be really key to, carrying this through the next step. From there, defining a funding strategy. There are a lot of opportunities available to Beaufort County from a funding perspective, and we covered a lot of those in the report. A lot of those are fairly, I'm sure you all know about them from a public financing perspective in terms of bonds, in terms of different tax revenues that can be put to it. But some of the more creative ones that we've seen in projects like this are, monies from the federal government, and whether that's the National Endowment of the Arts or other sort of arts grant programs, or, given St. Helena's coastal nature, FEMA is often looking for facilities to use as staging zones for, hurricane evacuation, different training operations that they run. So just by way of anecdote, we're working currently in Horry County, South Carolina, so near the Myrtle Beach area on a multi-purpose event space there. And there's some interest from FEMA as well as from the local utility in using the facility to kind of stage operations for disaster relief and recovery. So, I think that's definitely another opportunity. So looking at some of those creative, where could we go with this that maybe is a little bit out of the box, but, we're identifying project partners that need it once a year, but when they do, they really need it, right? And we discussed those more in the report, but I think that's going to be an important part of it. Site selection is definitely a key piece of this. There's the Corners community on St. Helena Island, I think is, where we've heard the most of, this is really what we would want as an opportunity for this project. But finding the right site that has, proximity to other nearby assets, accessibility by road, and also maybe even by pedestrian is really critical, as well as sort of the site beauty and showing off the natural beauty of St. Helena Island. And then from there, you're going to look at a conceptual design based on both the needs of the facility and those tenants that the facility is going to have, its users, as well as stakeholder input. So making sure that the community is heavily engaged in this process to make sure that the facility is serving their needs. And then finally, a detailed design, and that's when you would then, look into construction. But this is sort of an outline of what we see as kind of the next steps from here. And again, this being the very early stage of, we think that there's a need here, this is feasible, and here's where you would go from here.
Okay.
And so I'll pause right there, and that's all the information we had to present today, but we're, here to answer questions or any other discussion around this.
Well, thank you very much. This was a very in-depth study and a lot of information in it. I'd like to open it up for some questions at this time.
Madam Chairman, before
Yes.
you do that, I just want to thank Mr. Fleming and Mr. Johnson for 2 years of work. COVID got us, so it sort of delayed us, but I just want to thank you for all the time and effort you put into this.
And, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Passman?
Thank you.
John or Ryan, do you have a speculative cost for such a facility?
We do not. We have not, as part of our scope, we were not, asked to go down that, but that is one of the next steps that we've outlined. And I think in the case studies that we've shared in our report, there are costs for some of those developments, which could provide some initial information about how much similar facilities cost.
I had a question. The 3 case studies that you had, I thought were excellent. 2 of them are in tourism areas, Nags Head and North Carolina, Cherokee, but I'm very familiar with Colquitt. Nobody goes to Colquitt unless they live there. It's in the heart of peanut country and cotton country. But the costs seem pretty relative to each other. I was surprised that the 2 that are kind of centers of tourism had not turned a profit yet. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. So a lot of times public assembly facilities, and John mentioned this a few times, really, represent a resource for the community. So, a lot of times the operations to actually run these buildings from a day-to-day perspective is greater than the revenues that they're able to bring in.
Okay.
And, it just really depends the amount you want to charge for things like rent for, a nonprofit rental rate or a for-profit rental rate, and the frequency that which you allow those. Also, if you want to get a commission off any food and beverage operations that happen. So there is a way to make them financially perform better, but we made assumptions that we've, utilized and seen from other communities that, is a balance between that for-profit model as well as supporting nonprofit and cultural needs of the community.
I would say a perfect analogy for it in my mind is if you think about, one event kind of space that a lot of us have been to or used is a wedding venue, right? And wedding venues tend to be privately owned and thus are, making profit. But everything at a wedding venue costs extra and there aren't a whole lot of discounts available. So, you could run one of these things akin to a wedding venue where the goal is to, make as much money as you possibly can off of it. But, the result of that is maybe that, you're maybe foregoing some of the economic impact component of it, and B, you're maybe not allowing it to be as accessible to some of the community events that you're hoping to serve. So it's a balance between, looking at both of those goals and how do you weigh them? And that every community is different and every project is different in terms of what the needs and goals are there.
Any other questions?
I have some questions.
Oh, I think Councilman Tabernick will be next.
Thank you. So I was looking at your SWOT analysis on page 34 of our packet, and it clearly outlines some of the threats and weaknesses. And my question, I was not on council when this study was commissioned. However, we have been hearing from people repeatedly at council that they would like a recreation center. This in no way is, I know you're talking about flexible space, but when I think of a rec center, I think of basketball courts, other courts. I don't think of 7,500 square feet of flexible room. That's not gonna serve the youth of St. Helena, which is what we've been hearing. So I'm just putting that out, as, I was not here when this was commissioned, but that's just my take. And when you look at your SWOT, the threats are very real, as you mentioned, attracting acts from Charleston and Savannah. And I know that because Sun City, we grabbed them between the two. This is a real issue. And failure to draw people from Hilton Head. And they're not gonna count as tourists because they're not 50 miles away. So you're not looking at accommodations tax here. There's some real threats and weaknesses here. So I just want us to keep in mind that we've been hearing about a rec center that is not this. I'm clear.
And I agree with you that it is not this. A rec center basically is just that, a rec center.
Correct.
This is more or less focusing on economic development for the St. Helena community, not necessarily a rec center. So the difference
question-
is.
Yeah, question
Yeah.
is which is the bigger need? That's my question.
That's a
Yeah.
good question, right, but don't confuse the two.
No, I have
But I
them
think you need to
clear.
define which one is greater at this time as we move forward. Yes,
Correct.
ma'am.
I have a
agree.
clear understanding. I'm just questioning which one is the greater need for that community, or greater want, I guess I would say. Yeah.
Councilman Brown, I think you're next.
That's my first question. How is this economic development? When you look at page 83, for the first 10 years, it's a negative $338,000 all the way to $228,000. So who's going to pick up all that negative revenue? Who's going to cover that? That's my question. Who is going to cover the negative cash flow?
So there's a couple strategies around that.
Oh, okay.
You know, and it doesn't have to be from, the general fund. It can be, as John mentioned, there's a lot of grant opportunities for these types of projects. So that's a real key resource that we utilize. And then also, developing a foundation, getting creative through, fundraising activities to provide support on an annual basis, to cover those operating costs and overruns, are typically how we would see those addressed. So I think creating a nonprofit foundation and then having, supporters and fundraising efforts, to help ameliorate the negative operating income would be, some of the strategies that we would typically utilize.
Another one that we see a lot is we work a lot with fairgrounds around the country, and with fairgrounds, they're best known for the annual fair, whether it's a county fair or a state fair. But year round, there's all sorts of agricultural events going on there, whether that's equestrian or a lot of 4-H education events, etc. In a lot of cases, fairgrounds lose money on everything throughout the year except for the annual fair, and they make a lot of money on the annual fair, and that helps balance their books. So, festivalization is sort of the name for that, but it's where, you look to, this is a community resource 350 days of the year, but for 2 weeks out of the year, we are trying to make as much money as we can on a large event, and that's another way to sort of approach that revenue model.
And then the last point I'd like to make is the economic impact analysis that we included as part of our work. We really look at that as a return on investment calculation. So not for this facility, none of that activity or spending would be happening on St. Helena Island or in Beaufort County. So that's how we really measure the financial and visitation impact that a project like this would have.
Okay, any other questions?
Madam Chairman, not a question, but more of a comment. One of the things when we look at St. Helena, it's a very cultural center, community. And with the Penn Center that's there for years, it's been providing that cultural aspect. There are other avenues that are happening on St. Helena at this time. One of the things that I asked the committee to address was actually accommodation, because I know that we don't have a hotel on St. Helena, and people, when they visit, need to have a place to stay. But there's the opportunities for community to invest in Airbnbs so that people can actually find a place to stay, and they can also generate income within that community. This whole project is to center around local small businesses benefiting from different events, cultural events that are happening, that could happen on St. Helena. And when you start looking at the food culture, we don't have a food culture venue that we can, other than the Gullah Grub, that we can actually visit. This is actually expanding all of that. And one of the things I shared with you which was very interesting, is that I was told that in Michigan, that on the menu in Michigan, shrimp and grits. That's a local culture here. And we are not benefiting from that here. And I think these are opportunities for that to happen, to flourish. The recommendation is to send it to the Economic Development Corporation for them to further review and to study and to bring back recommendation to this body. And I think at that time, this body can make those kind of decision that Tab just talked about earlier. So that's my motion that I want to put on the floor.
To accept the feasibility study and a letter of support to the economic development.
May I say one more thing?
Well, I need a second if we're gonna.
I'll second
Okay, second by Councilman Dawson. Okay, go ahead, Councilman Brown.
The way we define economic development here in Beaufort County is totally different from the way the Department of Commerce in Columbia defines it. And anyway, that's all I have to say.
So we have a motion and a second, and this is just to recommend that we accept the feasibility study and a letter of support to move it forward to the Economic Development Corporation.
I'm going to ask for an amendment that the letter of support not be included. That it goes to economic development because they're going to have to do due diligence about every aspect of what the presentation is.
Okay.
Before we can, as a council, say, we need to support this.
I want to second that.
Okay, we have a second by
please.
Councilman Reed's motion. Do we need a roll call vote for that amendment? Can we?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, without objection, the amendment will pass. All right, let's go back to the original motion, which will be now to forward it to the Economic Development Corporation. We had a motion and a second to that. All without objection, the committee will recommend that it go forward for analysis as stated by County Council Chairman. Okay, thank you. Thank you for all your hard work on this. This is a lot of information in there. All right, let's go on the agenda. The next item is to recommend approval to council of an ordinance amending the Community Development Code, section 3.1.60, 3.3.40, and 3.3.50, standards to allow dwelling, single-family detached unit in C4 neighborhood mixed use and C5 regional center mixed use. And Mr. Merchant will talk about that.
Well, good afternoon. What we have before us is a requested text amendment to our Community Development Code. This initiated with a citizen in Beaufort County, and we have our most intense commercial district, C5 Regional Center Mixed Use. basically, allows most regional shopping facilities, office, service industries, but it does not permit single-family houses. And that's very common in ordinances. The idea being that prime land for commercial development, you don't want to, you want to be able to make sure that that land is available for future commercial development, to serve the needs of the community. There's an area in northern Beaufort County, this is near the intersection of 170 and Paris Island Gateway or Highway or 21, where there are a lot of smaller lots, and there's a pattern of, I would say, more rural residential development there. And that pattern of development was there before we even had zoning in Beaufort County. The proximity of those neighborhoods, it would make sense from a location standpoint for them to be zoned regional commercial, but there are active, residential communities there. And what the ordinance prevents is people from building a house on a lot of record, or if they want to replace a mobile home with a larger mobile home, they're running into problems with our zoning ordinance. So we received this request, we reviewed it as staff, and I could go through there's a set of criteria for text amendments very similar to map amendments. But one of the recommendations that staff has brought forward, there's another district called C4 neighborhoods, is it neighborhood or, community center mixed use, I'm sorry. And that district also does not allow single-family houses, and for consistency purposes, since that's a less intense district, it would make sense for that to allow houses as well. In our analysis of the county, in southern Beaufort County, we have two primary areas where we have zone C5. One is the 278 corridor, the areas that are not within PUDs, and then the other is primarily this intersection with Highway 21, Paris Island Gateway, and 170. And this condition with small lots and residential houses exists almost exclusively in the northern part of our county, so this wouldn't impact the 278 corridor. Unless somebody redeveloped, which I think is highly unlikely given the economics and land values of the area.
Okay, we'll open it up for questions before we entertain the motion, because the motion's going to have several steps to it. And this is in Councilman Dawson's district.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Rob, if I might, Rob, this proposal to actually allow well, let me phrase it this way. This request actually is asking us to allow the C5 district to put homes that have, what's the additional unit called? The house and then the second unit. Right?
Yeah, it would permit a single-family house and then in addition, an accessory dwelling.
An
unit.
accessory dwelling, okay. All right, so if we approve this recommendation, then this proposal is coming from a discussion I had with a developer who actually came before us several months ago with a similar proposal to actually develop some homes over in the Ramsey, on the Ramsey track over by Battle Creek High School, correct?
Well, the two are not related, but this came from someone who owns a small piece of property over off of Old Jericho Road, near that intersection that I had mentioned earlier. The land at Ramsey Farm, that is currently zoned T2 rural, so this would not apply to that.
Correct. All right, so if we amend this ordinance to allow the C5 to have the ability to build a home with the accessory building onto it, is that not increasing the density in that C5 district?
Well, the irony that I should have mentioned, the C5 district allows multifamily developments of up to 18 units per acre. So there are different types of residential development that's permitted in the district already. What is not permitted is single-family houses. So it could, over time, in that area where you have a pattern of small lots, result in more houses, but that would, if they developed single-family, it would be nowhere near the density that somebody could already obtain with a multifamily development.
So it is increasing the density. It's the capability of increasing the number of houses they could build.
It could increase the number of single-family houses. Yes.
Okay, that's my point. All right.
I have a question.
Yes, Councilman Devereux.
I'm looking at the planning commission voted 4-3 to recommend approval, and you're recommending full approval. They were split, literally. Can you explain why they were split?
I think it had primarily to do with many zoning ordinances in the most intense districts don't permit single-family houses. And the purpose behind that is that you're trying to reserve the area, locations of the county where the highest and best use is regional commercial, so that if somebody wants to develop regional commercial, there's land available. This particular area that this would impact the most is already subdivided into small parcels. So, we believe that that community is only going to change incrementally, and this prohibition on single-family houses has been a hardship for the people who live there for as long as we've had zoning in that area. So I would say that that's the primary objection from the Planning Commission, but, staff still, from our standpoint, we are seeing people come in the office asking for changes in that area and have been, prohibited from either replacing a mobile home or building a house on a lot of record, and so.
And what impact does it have south of the Broad? Tell me
Well,
that area.
South of the Broads, the land that is zoned C5, that land is almost all developed already. So, and they're also a pattern of larger lots. So it's a different dynamic where you don't have an existing residential community that was rezoned to a commercial district. You have an area that is, over the last 20 years built out, and most of the regional commercial land that is zoned for regional commercial has been developed.
So this impact is minimal other than this one area?
Yes, that's our assessment of this change.
Chairman Passman?
Well, that was going to be my question. While you say it's not an adverse effect in the south, but if there is available land and you could put single-family homes, because we've made this amendment, that could change that property, correct?
It could.
Okay.
It's, when we look at the 278 corridor, the chances of somebody redeveloping a commercial lot for single family, the market just doesn't support that kind of change. It could happen. Over time, we've seen some challenges to retail in general, but we already allow multifamily developments in those areas.
I think, I'm going to let Councilman Rentz, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Merchant, two questions. Where in the south is that location that Mr. Passman was talking about that potentially could have a single-family dwelling? And two, Mr. Dawson, if I understand this exchange here, the people that live in that area support this, is what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Well, I thought I heard that.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, listen, I value what the committee's done and what we all think, but how about the people that live in that area? How do they view this?
I'm not familiar with the area that he's referring to. I thought it was another project, but to the chairman's point, if we make this zoning change to the C5 amended, as south of the Broad, the area that you just discussed is built out. That means it's to its max. If we make this change to this particular site that Rob is mentioning, not only does it apply there, but it applies to every other site that wants to be developed, which I refer to as the Ramsey tract, which this is not the Ramsey tract. So our position is that we don't want to see north of the Broad built out like south of the Broad. That's not what we want.
I would just be basic and find out what the people want in that area, just to factor that into what we present here.
All right, Councilman Glover, you have a
I want
question?
to make sure I understand what's happening, because I see it a little differently. And if I'm wrong, please tell me. To go from a C5, which is highly commercial, to residential, that's almost like downzoning to me.
No, what this change does is it adds single-family residential as a permitted use in the C5 district. And what it's meant to do is address those areas where there's already a pattern of single-family development. And there is at that, along Old Cherico Road and some of those other side streets near the intersection of 170 and Paris Island Gateway.
Okay, thank you.
They're existing, some of them with lots with trailers on them.
Yeah, and so there's already a dynamic there. Because of the C5 zoning, we have seen we're dealing with other impacts of the zoning ordinance. We've had a nursery locate right next to a mobile home that's been there for many years. We've had land annexed into the city because
Right,
it's one
on
of those
Cherokee
areas
Road,
with,
yeah,
and so it's what I believe would be helpful to that community is if we made this change to the C5, at least it would not prevent a situation where somebody wanted to, build they had a 2-acre lot, they wanted to subdivide into 2 lots and build 2 houses. The type of things that you would normally be able to do in any other district, they can't do here because single family is not a permitted use.
Okay. Any other discussion before we call for the question?
Just, the point is, this is very unique because of this particular location that
Yeah.
we're talking about. It doesn't mean it's carte blanche, because any zoning change, like anything else, has to go through a process and procedure.
Yes, and I will say, because this is a text amendment, and I'll just put the caveat, it will mean that land in the 278 corridor could build single family, but in our assessment of the market and
Right.
the actuality of that happening, we think is highly unlikely. That there are
The
other-
highest and best value for that would
Yes.
be commercial.
And there are other residential uses. If somebody wanted to redevelop retail, there's multifamily, townhouses, those types of
I
uses
see.
already permitted.
If I may, I
Yes,
go
sir.
back to my original question. If we vote to amend this zoning request to allow the C5 to actually have the residential home and the, what's the name of it? Accessory dwelling, then we are looking at an increase in development, right? It will increase the density. It is a density increase to properties who we apply the C5 zoning to.
Well, I will say that any one of those properties could redevelop from single family to multifamily, as the law currently stands.
By right.
What we're doing is giving them an option if they simply want to remain on the property or subdivide to build another house, they could do something more incremental like that. So the option is already there within this district to increase density.
C5 and multifamily can be in C5
Yes.
as it stands now. This won't change that.
And you don't have to have an accessory dwelling unit.
No. That's,
Okay, Councilman
Roll call.
Dawson.
Roll call.
Okay, we don't have we need a motion.
Yeah, we need a motion.
It can be,
Well, I'll make the motion.
okay, yes, sir. Go
I
ahead.
move that we decline to approve
The
the
text
staff
amendment.
zoning request.
or the text amendments?
For the text amendment, yes.
I'll second that.
Wait, you have to define.
It
Go to
would-
page 95.
You have to
and
define the table, it's three
which-
point one.
Which of those requests?
Yep.
It's 3.1.6, 3.3.4, and 3.3.5.
All right, I'll tell you what.
It's on here.
It's item 9, right?
Correct.
Okay.
There you go.
Then I recommend that council disapprove the ordinance amending the Community Development Code for section 3.1.60, consolidated use table. Also 3.3.40, community center mixed use. Also C4, zoning standards, and 3.350, regional center mixed use. Also C5, zone standards to allow dwelling, single-family detached unit in C4 mixed use and C5 regional mixed use zoning.
Now you have to go through the list of the 7 items.
All
Okay,
right.
I was gonna say that. Okay.
I seconded it, so now you can go.
Yeah,
through it.
now, if you look on page,
He's
95 of the,
I got it?
yes, you have to go through all of those.
All right. First of all, it is not consistent with the goals and objectives of the policies of the comprehensive plan. It is in conflict with any provision of this development code or the code of ordinances. It is not required by change conditions, does not address a demonstrated community need, is not consistent with the purpose and intent of the zones in this development code, or would improve compatibility among uses and ensure efficient development within the county. Also, it would not result in a logical and orderly development pattern. And last, it would result in adverse impacts on the natural environment, including but not limited to water, air, noise, stormwater management, wildlife, vegetations, wetlands, and the natural functioning of the environment.
Okay, we need a second? for
I
that?
seconded it.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir, for discussion.
Well, this is not to this particular area only. It would
Right.
apply to all of those areas that have this designation?
It would apply to all
Okay.
C4 and
the
C5
request is
districts.
coming here from a resident of that community that wants to build a house.
Yes. And we've received several requests in that area, and we believe,
From people who would like to build a single-family house, which is now not permitted,
correct,
on land they already own.
yes.
Okay,
Now-
any
now,
other
wait a minute.
questions?
Let's clarify for a minute. They can't build a house, or they can't build a house with a detached?
no, you can't build a house.
They can't build a house. Single family is not a permitted use
Okay.
in the C4 or C5 district,
So the people who live there want to build a house, and we're not letting them do that.
correct.
So what
Well,
is it
can they-
currently zoned now?
C5, C4.
What,
What is it
What is the
currently?
current zoning now before we make this change?
well, we're not changing the zoning district, so this would apply to all areas that are zoned C4 or C5, but there's an area near the old Walmarts, in Burton, where while they are located in a good area for commercial, the pattern of development that exists currently is residential. So you have a number of people who live in single-family houses in that area that are zoned C5. And so the current zoning does not allow them to build a house, and that's what this change is designed to enable.
So what are they living in now?
Yeah.
Well, they're living in houses, but they've been there for,
So they'd like to build a bigger house.
Or another
Yes.
house, or another house, yeah.
All right, I'll tell you what,
Yes, sir,
I'd like to withdraw my motion.
okay.
I'll withdraw the second if you want.
Okay, all right. All right, I will entertain a motion concerning this text amendment, another motion. Anyone?
Yeah, I'll make it.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion's made by Vice Chairman McEllen, second by Councilman Brown. And we need to go through those questions again on page 95, please.
Yeah, they're right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Just say grant.
I move that we grant.
I move that we grant the request for the text amendment for the following reasons state all the support your motion, the quest. I have to go through the whole
Yep.
list?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I'm saying is,
You're saying this for him. Okay.
oh,
That's okay.
all right.
That's fine.
Not a machine.
Is it, okay.
Is.
I don't-
It is.
Is consistent with the goals and objectives and policies of the comprehensive plan?
Is
Is not? Okay, thank you. In conflict with any provisions of this development code or the code of ordinances? Is not, or
Is.
Is required by changed conditions? Does address a demonstrated community need? Is consistent with the purpose and intent of the zones of this development code? Or would improve
Compatibility.
among uses and ensure efficient development within the county? Would result in logic and orderly development pattern? Would not result in an adverse impacts on the natural environment, including, but not limited to water, air, noise, stormwater management, life, wildlife, vegetation, wetlands, and natural functioning of the environment.
Okay, thank you. That was, okay, we're good with that? Any, without objection? Okay, we'll go forward with this. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Robbie.
Okay.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
All right, the next one is recommend approval. This is you again, Rob. You ready?
Okay.
Recommend approval to council of an ordinance. We need to move it along because we're running out of time. But this is all good. We've got a lot going on today. Recommend approval to council of an ordinance for text amendment to Article 1, Division 1.3, Section 1.3.5, exemptions of the CDC to provide exemptions to address county public service uses.
Right. Okay.
Okay?
So this is a provision that went before council in 2020. And what it is it is a provision that allows for the location of public service or county service uses in the county, and it provides a mechanism for these to locate there without having to go through a zoning amendment if that district does not permit that type of use. So the idea is if the county has a compelling reason to locate a use, let's say a public safety facility, fire station, something of that nature in an area where that zoning does not permit, what this does is set up a procedure where the plans for that use would be presented to the Planning Commission for a public hearing and then to council. And then through those two public hearings, the council would make a determination of that use, is it appropriate for that area. The advantage of this approach and the reason that it is not simply a change in zoning to allow this use is that sometimes there's the unintended consequences. You may have a neighborhood where this particular public service use is very much needed, but to change the zoning would allow all the other uses that that district would allow. And then it could create a legacy of a spot zone piece of property or piece of property that's just simply not zoned appropriate for that area. So this gives council the ability for public safety or public service use to be able to site-specific located in that. So this is under a provision for exemptions in Article 1 of our code.
Okay. And what happened in 2020 that we?
So this is, as I told the Planning Commission, I think this was one of our casualties of COVID. This
okay.
project, went before the Planning Commission. They recommended approval. It went to council, and at that time, it's my understanding, council made it more stringent. I think the original proposal had one public hearing, council added a second, and then it made it through 3 readings, but there's some question about how it was ratified and whether the right final version of it was adopted.
Sure,
This is
real
coming
quickly,
back to
it
those
came
of
to
us
council
that
spring of 2020,
It was amended, brought back, went through 3 readings, but because we had gotten into COVID, everything was virtual, it was not ratified.
Okay.
So instead of just doing the ratification some years later, we're bringing it back through, but council's already approved it once, and we're adding these layers, and we'd like your support on it, please.
Okay, on page, if y'all could show up on the screen, page 113.
Okay.
I'd like to entertain a motion with the verbiage that's on there regarding this, and in a second, and then if anyone has any questions, we can talk about it quickly.
Okay.
You need more than 10 out of 10.
You want a motion, Madam Chairman? or you-
Yes.
I still move that we grant the request that's coming before us. and you want
Okay,
me to go
we've
down
got
the
to go,
list?
we got to go through those.
It is consistent with the goals, objectives, and
Yes.
policies of the comprehensive plan. It's not in conflict with any provision of this development code or the code of ordinance. It is required by change conditions. It does address it does address a demonstrated community need. It's consistent with the purpose and intent of the zone in this development code, or would improve compatibility among uses and ensure efficient development within the county. It would result in a logical and orderly development pattern and would not result in an adverse impact on the natural environment, including but not limited to the water, air, noise, stormwater management, wildlife, etc. And I remember this well, and I think the issue was that it was not brought before for a public meeting, hearing for that community. And so this will allow that to be addressed at this time.
Okay, do I have a second to Councilman Glover's motion?
Second.
All right, Chairman Passman, second. Without objection? Or let's have any discussion? None? All right, without objection, this will go forward. All right, thank you.
Madam Chairman, I would say this, even though the council at the time thought, and Chuck, you can, Atkinson, you can correct me if possible, council really thought that there was a need for an emergency, but the community did not, and they were not involved in that whole aspect. Is that?
So I think that was long before the 2020 initial discussion, and all that was vetted out by adding this in the second time it came through. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, next one, the next one is approval to council of an ordinance for a comprehensive plan amendment to add the Beaufort County Housing Impact Analysis as an appendix to the 2040 comprehensive plan. And this was in your packet. It was in there twice, but it's the same report, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So it has been the demonstrated will of council that the use of ATAX for affordable housing is something that council wants to have an option on. In order to do that through state law, we have to do the housing impact analysis and add that as an appendices to our comp plan, and we're bringing this forward to do that. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, it's a question.
Some great.
I'll move that forward.
All right, motion by Vice Chairman McKellen.
I'll
Do I have a
second
second? Seconds by Councilman Tabernick to move that forward. Without objection, this will be sent on as,
Yes, ma'am, it'll go forward to council for 3
for
readings.
council at the next.
And I will say, at the next meeting, yes,
Yes.
ma'am. And I will say that if you want to see the full presentation on the housing analysis, you can look at the recording of the planning commission, and it's a very lengthy
Yes.
presentation.
Yes.
Thank you very
Can I
much.
comment, Ms.?
Yes, ma'am.
So I did watch the planning commission. It was a really good discussion. It's a very long presentation, but we need this so that we can be in line to use ATAX funds, which we're setting aside. So I appreciate this being done, but it is very long, so get ready to have your favorite beverage.
Thank you for your support.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir. Councilman Dawson.
I think at the end you need to go through this according to our packet.
I'm sorry, what? Say,
At the end of making the motion, before we vote on it, we have to go through this.
You have,
oh, yes, sir.
there's 6 items.
6 items, I'm sorry.
Well, what happened to that thing?
Thank you for reminding me.
Go back to the top.
Councilman McKellen.
Yeah.
Is it permitted to,
That's for capital
To
investments.
grant.
Yeah.
You got it? What to read?
Yeah.
What page is it?
It's page 123 on the packet.
See it, item number 11.
Okay.
Page 123?
Is it different than, oh, I lost it.
All right, that's all right, I'll get it, I'll get it.
Ms. Brock, you want to put it up on the screen?
Yes,
That might
ma'am.
make it easier to,
May have mine.
Read.
I'll see if I can get it back.
here we go. It's up on the screen if you want to do it that way, Councilman.
Yeah. This motion is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policy of the comprehensive plan. It's not in conflict with any provisions of the development code or the code of ordinances. It's required by changed conditions. It addresses a demonstrated community need. It's consistent with the purpose and intent of the zones in this development code, or would improve compatibility among uses and ensure efficient development within the county, would result in a logical and orderly development pattern, and would not result in adverse impacts on the natural environment, including but not limited to water, air, noise, stormwater management, and wildlife vegetation, wetlands, and the national function of the environment.
Yeah, wait.
No?
It's not the right
It's the
one.
It's
wrong
not,
one?
which
Which
the
one?
wrong
I just
one.
walked in.
This is the correct
Oh, I
one.
need that.
Yeah, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry.
It's page 123.
Yeah.
Are we on item 11?
Okay, so I move we grant the request for the comprehensive plan amendment for the following reasons: capital investments, population trends, land committed to development, density, use, or other conditions have changed or justify the amendment consistent with the comprehensive plan's goals and policies, if necessary to respond to state and federal legislation, would result in development that's compatible with surrounding land uses, would not affect the capacities of public facilities and services, including roads, utilities, law enforcement, fire, EMS, school, parks and recreation, solid waste and drainage facilities, would not result in a negative impact on natural resources. That's all of them? 6 or is there one?
I'm looking to our attorneys. We're good to go on those? Okay. And we had the second was by, who seconded your motion?
I did. I think.
Councilman Tabernick seconded. All right, without objection. We did this the right way.
Yep.
This will go forward.
Backup for 11, yeah.
I'm sorry, Ms. Brock? Is that
We
good?
did have the backup for 11 pulled up, so, no,
Oh.
item number 11.
Okay, all right. All right, the next item is, we have, Ms. Audra's gonna present the approval to council of an ordinance amending the Beaufort County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 46, Health and Sanitation, Alcohol and Drug Abuse Board, Sections 121, Purpose, and 122, Powers and Duties, repealing Section 46-122. There's no impact to the county from a financial standpoint on this, if you want to
Yes, Madam Chair.
go forward with that.
Like you stated, this is recommending approval for an ordinance amendment to Beaufort County Code of Ordinance, Chapter 46, Article 6, Alcohol and Drug Abuse Board, the sections that you referenced. And in seeking this approval, it will in line with the responsibilities and duties of the department director.
Okay. So we need a motion to make these amendments, amending that code of ordinances.
So moved.
Okay, we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, discussion?
Are there any current active board members now?
Yes, sir, they are, and I would like to share, in speaking with the director and the board chair, advisory board chair, Ms. Hartman, we believe their role would be better used as ambassadors in their community. So we will definitely, continue to utilize their services. We just feel that this will be in a more appropriate capacity for them to serve as.
Any other questions or comments?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
Serving on that board, before I was appointed a judge for a number of years, I agree with what they're doing here. I think it makes a lot of sense because the ability of people on the board to serve as ambassadors to their communities provides a much more positive benefit than just attending a board meeting where a lot of information was presented that was really not actionable. And I think this is a great idea to give them a better purpose in their community, and I think it will result in better programs for the newly named organization. So
Yes,
I
sir.
think it's a great move.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, if hearing none, without objection, this will go forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman,
Yeah.
I'm gonna abstain, that's all.
Oh, we can do a roll call. You want to do a roll?
No, you don't have to do a roll call.
Okay.
Just-
All right, we'll let the
Okay.
record reflect abstain. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, last but not least is a presentation, just for information, by Brenda Dooley with, is she, there she is, I see her. She is going to do a presentation. This is not for any action except to forward for discussion and approval. We don't need to take a vote. We can refer it back to staff, but she's going to do a presentation about a concept for Habitat for Humanity and affordable housing plan for veterans.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dooley.
Thank you all so much for having us here this afternoon to talk about this exciting possibility. We are here as a fairly newly merged organization of 2 affiliates in Beaufort County and looking forward to doing some really exciting things. And one of those things we've been looking at is a Veterans Village in Beaufort County. And it just represents a great opportunity for collaboration in the county and as one now being able to do something like this. And I probably have control here of this. All right. So a Veterans Village is something we would be looking at as an opportunity to find housing for veterans in our community, and is something that internationally our national organization has a formal program for veterans built. So it would be something we would love to bring here to the local community. So why does it matter? I'm sure you all know why it matters. We have a military community here, and being able to support our veterans this way would be an incredible opportunity. Wanting to keep those veterans here in our local community with rising housing costs, it's harder and harder to be able to do that and make that transition to civilian life. And we have a large community here. We know we do. And excuse me, allergies. And so we would be able to provide housing. It could vary in size from a small community to even a larger, depending on what we could find for a site. So the challenge for our veterans, they spend more than 30% of their income on housing. 30% is pretty much considered to be a standard that you don't want to see folks spend more of their income on housing. Many spend up to 50% on housing, and a lot of times that's not on home ownership, that's on rental. So they're not getting anything back for that money that they're paying into it over the long term. And then our female veterans, especially single mothers, are struggling. Habitat has a successful program here in our community. Between our 2 affiliates that have been around since 1990, we've built 181 homes in Beaufort County. Our homes are energy efficient. We're always looking to update that and be on top of the most current energy efficiency options that we have available. And then there's plenty of opportunity here for collaboration and partnership, and we've talked with some of these organizations about this opportunity, and there's definitely an interest there in doing this. And just an idea of what the process getting started would just be our steering committee to look at it, who all should be involved, how we apply our program to this Veterans Village. Looking at the fundraising for that, I don't see that as a huge problem. We would start our building, once we have a site identified and funds raised, we would start construction on those homes and then end up with an evaluation of the program to see if there's more opportunity. So we're asking the county to consider assisting us in identifying a piece of property that might be a great opportunity to look at for this kind of a project. And we've got, as I mentioned, some support already there from local organizations. And I'll tell you, we're building right now out by the air station, and the support of our Marines is incredible out there. The single Marine program, those volunteers that we get out of that program, there's a lot of interest in Habitat and what we do, and great support from our Marine Corps. So that was it, very quickly. Any
Okay.
questions that I can answer for anyone?
Just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Howell and I, about 6 years ago, 6 years ago, sat around talking about the homeless. And will you be addressing homeless veterans as well with this project?
Our program is looking at families or individuals even who can come into the program and pay a mortgage. So they do need to have income. But again, we're looking at not having costs over 30% of that income.
Sure, right, I got that part. Would love to see something for the homeless veterans.
And again,
If
as
you
part
can
of,
address that, you may not be able to, but I'm just gonna throw that on the table, that's all.
as part of the steering committee, that could be something we can look at. I know there are Habitat affiliates who are looking at tiny houses for veterans, the smaller homes. And we do have a plan for a one-bedroom cottage that we could
And I
look
agree
at.
with you that, we have over 25% of veterans here, the number, and we got 2 military bases here, and we got a lot of veterans, and we, just to see a homeless vet for what they've done and stuff, for whatever reason, they're not in a home. Be good to address that as well, too.
We can look at a big picture, absolutely.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilman Taberner?
At the end, you said that you were looking for county to discuss this and maybe provide land. And I know we received a whole list of land we owned, so that might be something we would discuss at council. I think it's a very good program, and we should discuss it at council.
Okay.
Just one
Thank you.
comment.
Yes, sir.
I just want to take a
Councilman.
minute and congratulate you for the work you're doing. It's very important and vital in our community to do this type of work. So I just offer my thanks on behalf of all of us for what you're doing and accomplishing.
I love doing it.
I know you do, and thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
any other comments? I think we'd like to look forward to being involved in a plan and a task group, and we'll, if there's no other action we can take at this time, but we would definitely be interested in that.
Thank you so
It sounds
much.
like that's a consensus of the committee, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For being
Thank
here.
you.
All right, we are adjourned. And what time will we start, Chairman?
We'll probably start at 5 after.
Okay.
To make sure we can change over.
All right, 5.